Okay, today we're going to look at the K5 or the Kia Optima as it is called in the States. So before I start, I just want to tell you that I haven't been a fan of Korean cars, and I actually thought I would never own a Korean car because I always thought that they were just, subpar Japanese knockoffs of brands like Honda and Toyota. But in the last decade or so, or maybe past 15 years, Korean cars, specifically Hyundai and Kia, they really have updated game. Well, although they're basically the same company. Anyways, the new Kia K5 Optima is without question, I think it really epitomizes the thriving state of Korean car manufacturing. So the K5 was just released to the public 2 days ago, 3 days ago, and um, I am impressed because compared to other cars where they release press photos and it looks really good, or teaser photos, it looks awesome. But when you actually look at it in person, it's kind of really weird, right? Specifically, I'm talking about the Hyundai Azera or the Grandeur, which I reviewed before. Anyways, the K5 Anyways, the K5 actually it looks really aggressive, but at the same time very understated. I kind of like it. I know it's like I know the K5 has always, in my opinion, been under the shadows of the Sonata. I really think people know the Sonata way more. It has been around for a longer time. But this time, I think it's gonna change. The K5 really does look good, and unlike the Sonata, which seems like a completely new car that doesn't resemble anything like the previous Sonatas, the K5 definitely seems like an evolution of the prior car, or there are aspects of the prior car on the new model. Especially the front with the grille, and I think the size of the lighting kind of you could tell it's a Kia or maybe an Optima K5. But with the new Sonata, I don't know, it just looks so different. Inside, the K5 is really well appointed with all the modern technologies, and it does have many. I mean, you could tell that Kia and Hyundai are basically the same company because um, inside the layout is very very similar to the Sonata and the new Grandeur. The digital instrument cluster, the widescreen navigation screen, widescreen infotainment navigation, uh, and the general layout of the climate control and the center console is very very similar to the Sonata. But one thing I do like about the K5 is that it doesn't seem to sit as high up as the Sonata. I remember being in the Sonata, and when I test drove it, I was like, why do I feel like I'm in an SUV? The K5 definitely seems like it's a little more snug, sitting down a little bit, which I think brings up more sportiness, right? Or it definitely does feel more sporty in that way. The interface is very similar. They do have different color schemes for it, and one thing I'm kind of sad that they took away in the interior is the lighting, right? They're offering the LED ambience lighting all over, and it does look kind of different from other cars because it has very distinct slashes or diagonals all over the light bars. But they got rid of the, trademark Kia red lighting on the buttons and everything, right? So now it just looks white, which I guess is cool. But I wish they offered the red lighting or they kept going on with that. I know it looks kind of a, bite off of BMW, but I thought it looked good, right? Because everything in Sonatas has been blue and, the red represents the other half, right? I'm pretty sure they made this way because, the Korean flag has red and blue on it. In any case, but they also have a different way to change the transmission. I don't know what to call this, but yeah, it's a rotary dial system, kind of similar to the Jaguars. Or I don't know if they still do it anymore, but the Sonata is a push button type, and the K5 has the dial, and I actually think the dial looks better. I think you'll get used to it I think it makes more sense to have a dial. The push button just seems so weird. The car is offered with a tremendous amount of options. It's actually quite ridiculous the type of technology that are on cars today. I really think we're at a renaissance. I really think we're living through a car or automotive renaissance right now. The amount of safety features and the technological integration with, smartphones and everything else is just insane. So in this car, some of the more notable things that they're offering is you could park the car with your remote control now. I don't know they allowed it, or I didn't know they did this before. I thought it was just a smartphone thing, but you could park your car with your smartphone. I mean, you could park your car with your remote. I think you just leave it a certain way and it just uses the sensors to back up into a tight space. I looked this up and they said it also can parallel park, but there are no videos on this actually happening. They're also offering the keyless entry with the smartphone. So you could use a smartphone to allow somebody else to drive the car, which I think is really stupid. I'm actually waiting for somebody to hack these cars so they could take that technology away. They also have the frontal collision warning. They have the um, pedestrian detection warning. They also have something called, I don't know what, they also have something that tells you that the car in front of you moved. And when I test drove the Sonata, this actually works. So they said this is because so many people are on smartphones that they don't notice that, the car in front of them left. So it just beeps at you when the car in front leaves and you're just there. So I guess they're trying to prevent you from getting honked at from the back. I think they're also offering something called a built-in cam, and I know in the States they call this a dash cam, but in Korea they call this the black box, which, kind of makes sense. But everybody in Korea already have black boxes, so I don't know how, useful this feature will be, but I think it's part of the collision warning system, and they just integrated that to record all the time. And they're also offering voice control, just like the BMWs and everything else. But I really rarely see people really using this, especially since everybody talks a little bit differently, and it does make mistakes. Although I think their Google AI and Google Now definitely does work well. And of course, they're implementing this in all the Hyundais and Kias. Well, as an option, I think, is the camera blind spot warning. And this really does work well. I've also driven the new Grandeur pretty recently, and it was also equipped with this feature. And I'm actually quite impressed because when you use this, it's kind of weird to get used to it, but you see the car and it's kind of weird getting used to this, but it actually I think is very very helpful. And when there is a car coming from the back and you're trying to merge, and they think that maybe the distance is not safe enough, the steering wheel vibrated. I was like, oh wow, that's really neat. And I know that technology was implemented a long time ago on Cadillacs or something that told you, hey, you're drifting off or something. But it definitely does work, and I hope they implement this in all cars. I think it will definitely reduce car accidents for sure. This particular model had a tan interior, which I quite like. Right, I wish people got more, varied colored interiors. I really think probably 95% or 90% of the cars that are sold in Korea have black interiors, which are just, it's so boring. Especially since everybody gets tinted windows here, and I mean they tint the whole thing out, including the front windshield, which, in my opinion, is crazy dangerous. But everybody thinks it's normal having front windshield tinted. I mean that would be ridiculous in America. So as of now in Korea, they're offering three engine types. One is the base 2.0 liter natural aspirated engine, and it's rated at 160 horsepower and I think about 150 torques. And the 1.6 turbo is offered in 1.6 turbo is rated at 180 horsepower, which I think is decent. I had an Avante, or I had an Elantra Sport with 200 horsepower, and that really got up and went. And I think it has good pickup. with enough torque. This car, I think they purposely rated at 180, but I'm sure there's a really easy tune to get it above 200. It's 200, I mean, it's about 180 horsepower, and it has about, I think 195 or 200 foot-pounds of torque. And the one other engine they're offering is the LPG engine, the liquefied petroleum gas, and that's you. They're offering that because it's going to be given out to rental cars and taxis because they use Sonatas and K5s as taxis for most cars or for most um, just the average taxi uses those cars, and that LPG um, engine is rated at 155 horsepower or 58 horsepower or something like that. But uh, LPG engines in general are very, very disappointing. But at the same time, you get much better gas mileage. So, I mean, I know they're going to offer a more powerful engine in America because Americans, you guys are spoiled. You really get like much larger displacement, much greater horsepower engines. And I thought that was the norm when I lived there. But apparently, throughout the rest of the world, having like a 2-liter engine is actually a big deal. Overall, I haven't test driven the car yet. I really plan to because you know what? I'm actually thinking about purchasing this. Um, the horsepower department, without question, is definitely lacking, right? I think this car would be good, maybe with 240 horsepower, maybe 250. But in terms of technology and all the safety features that are offered, it's kind of ridiculous. And it's in a really nice package, right? The car looks good. It has that fastback design in the back with the conventional trunk, but has all the technological features that you would need, and more importantly, all the safety features that you would want for only about $30,000 US, right? Which I think is a really big, which I think is a steal, right? Because you don't need all that horsepower to begin with. You don't need like 300 horsepower in a front wheel drive car. So if you don't need to go crazy fast, you just want safety and luxury in a car that looks good, I think, K5 is it, right? And I'm really thinking about picking one up for that reason. So I'm gonna go test drive it and see how it is. So maybe one of my future videos will end up being in my new car, right? In a new Kia, right? I've never owned a Kia before, but maybe this is the one. If they would just change that freaking logo, that Kia logo, man. I mean, the car looks so great, but it's gotta go, right? And I think many people agree. I actually asked one of the Kia helpers over here, and they're like, yeah, many people asked about the logo, but they said it'll cost so much to change the logos on all the things that are affiliated with it. And I think that's the reason why they're not doing it, which I think it's BS, right? They can do it.